Let's discuss 5 players that are going to help you beautiful people win $1 million. And probably just one of you, but maybe a couple of you, but $1 million this weekend. And let's get into it not now, but right now. So the first player that I want to talk about, you fellas out there, hey, you fellas out there, the first player I want to let you know about, schmack you around about, give you the big schmacks and the big information about is Mr. Michael Evans. And Michael Evans, you might think, hey, this is a show about that one dudes, the guys who are lower owned, and Mike Evans is going to be low owned this week? Sal, you lost your mind. No. In a week of uncertainty on a lot of guys' status, Mike Evans is not uncertain, but his status and his ownership, for some reason, people aren't certain about him. He is low owned this week. I have Mike Evans right now at 5% ownership, $7,100, 16.2 fantasy point projection. Now, there's a couple reasons why he is lower owned this week. For the first point, I mean, 16% target share in the year, that's gross, but this team throws the most in the league, over 7 targets per game. And the obvious points here, unlikely to have Leonard Fournette. No AB, no Chris Godwin. It's Gronk and it's Mike Evans. I'm sorry, Cyril Grayson. I'm sorry, Brashad Perriman. I'm sorry, Tyler. It's Mike Evans. And it's Gronk. But let's start to look at some things that make this even more appealing, other than the fact that, yeah, the big red zone body in Mike Evans, who's averaging a red zone target per game, more than a red zone target per game, right? That big guy is now seeing downfield usage, and the matchup is going to be surprisingly, and probably people won't notice this, very good. The Bucs have a 25 team implied total, and the Panthers secondary this year ranks bottom half of the league, and it's only getting worse because Stephon Gilmore, as of Thursday, was placed on the COVID list. I don't think he's getting off of that bad boy in 2 days, and he's been good this year since they acquired him. There's nobody else out there to stop Mike Evans. Mike Evans, who is moving into the slot more without Chris Godwin, probably even more now without Antonio Brown. Mike Evans is quietly playing 40% of his snaps out of the slot this year, and that's probably going to go up, where when you're in the slot, you have more of an advantage. Why is that? Because you have the whole field to work with. You're not having a sideline defender there to take you out of a play when you're on the left side trying to go left. So Mike Evans, against all of these now fill in and what's left of the Carolina secondary cornerbacks, he's going to have a size advantage. He's a big dude, right? But he's going to have like 35 pounds, 34 pounds on some of these guys. When he's in the slot, he will definitely have a size advantage. Their slot cornerback is Hartsfield for part of this game, likely, and he's giving up over a 70% catch rate. So that's all good. That's all fun. Evans last week came into the game with AB playing on quote-unquote limited. He only played 77% of the snaps, still saw 7 touchdowns, and for the first time in a while had over 100 air yards, right? Now that's a game where they're trailing, so they're going to try and take some more deep shots, but it was nice to see this versatility from Evans, moving into the slot, still commanding targets, deep downfield targets, and it wasn't on that last drive when Cyril Grayson was getting them, it was within the game in the first and second quarter. So I'm expecting an even better role change, and in games when Evans clears that 100 air yards number, he's had at least 13 Draftkings points in all of them, and you can count those games on multiple hands. It's not like it's a one-game sample here. He didn't play against the Panthers a couple weeks ago when Gilmore was in. Now Gilmore is out, and so is AB, and so is Godwin and Fournette. This looks fantastic for Evans. So why is nobody on him? Well, for the most part, he hasn't shot the lights out, right? Last week, a decent game, but not shooting the lights out. He is expensive. And there's a guy, A.J. Brown, who is $7,000, who's picking up 15% ownership. Whenever somebody is making a lineup decision in that range of wide receiver, A.J. Brown is getting all the attention. I have A.J. Brown right now for $7,000 for more fantasy points than Evan, about 1.5 points more, so we'll give it to him, 17.5 fantasy point projection, but he's at 15% ownership. He's 3 times as owned as Mike Evans as of this recording. That's a mistake, in my opinion. So I like Evans in stacks, and I like Evans as a one-off. I like the touchdown upside. We love Michael Evans. Let's slide into the second player, a tight end. The tightest events potentially for you. The tightest events, pause. A tight end that we can discuss right now. This man's name is George Kittle. Now, George Kittle, there was about a month ago to this point when he absolutely erupted, and we said, hey, George Kittle's going to be like 5% owned. That's the best leverage play on the slate. I don't feel as strongly about that in this one. It's not as good of a matchup for him. He is more expensive than he was then when he was in the 5K range, but I still think that he's probably the best leverage play, at least at the tight end position. Not on the slate, but at the tight end position. Now, of course, you're paying up to get different here. He is $6,700. I have him for 14.8 fantasy points and 5% ownership. The clear and obvious reason why he's not picking up as much ownership is his price point is expensive for a tight end on a week where, as of right now, the value is uncertain. We don't even know if we have much value. It's a weird slate. It's a gross slate. Not many consistent pieces on there. And one of the consistent pieces might be Gronk, who just cleared 100 yards last week, and Gronk is only a couple $100 less. Like, Gronk, I think, is a great play either way, even if he's 10% owned. But right now, Gronk is coming in with double the ownership as George Kittle. He's $400 less. So if you're looking for a way to get very unique in your lineups, if you just replace a Gronk with a Kittle, you're going to save 5 to 10% on your total lineup ownership. Now, I do have Gronk projecting out for better for cheaper, so I think Gronk's a solid play, but there is definitely leverage for a guy who I think we can say George Kittle right now is probably a better tight end than Gronk is. For a guy who probably has a higher ceiling, it's just not as ideal of a situation target share-wise with all those guys being out for Tampa. So I understand that, but that's kind of your leverage spot you're getting leverage off of Rob Gronkowski in that range, and that's why Kittle is giving us this lower owned tag. Kittle's going to get an average matchup versus these Rams linebackers. The secondary is improving now that they're actually healthy in that whole game where the secondary was out and Ramsey and their top safeties were out, right, and Von Miller was out. So the secondary is approaching back to being a top 10. The overall defense is number 1 in the NFL right now, so this is a tougher matchup. That's all baked into this, but Kittle, 25% target share when he's out there, and it's on 7 targets per game. Whether it is Jimmy G or Trey Lance, I would prefer it to be Jimmy G, but that's going to either way remain lower ownership. Now, he hasn't seen much volume, and this is another thing, right? Only 5 targets the last 2 games, keeping him lower owned because, look, they've only thrown an average of 28 times per game these last 2 games. They're focused, and they always have been on running the ball, but as 6-point underdogs in this one, trying to get into the playoffs here, I think they open it up a little bit more for a secondary that has been fine, but has not been as elite as past years. Had a fine game out week 10 against the secondary, scored a touchdown, 7 targets, had a solid game for a game where they ended up running the ball 30 plus times. He was still able to be efficient, and he's been efficient on the season. He has the lowest drop rate amongst tight ends, only 1. He has over 10 yards per target, that's number 2. He has downfield usage amongst tight ends, number 2 amongst the tight ends. And then the nice thing here, he's averaging the second most yards after the catch for a tight end. 5 yards after the catch per target. So, look, this is the beautiful thing. Even if he doesn't have high volume, even if he has 5 or 6 or 7 targets, like when he erupted in past weeks, when he has those 7 target games, he can still put you a 20-point day because of the fact that he can break things after the catch and he's getting downfield targets. That combination is just built in for upside. So George Kittle this week is that one dude. He's that guy at the leverage spot at the tight end position if you can afford it. Nobody's going to be going there. Nobody wants to pay up a tight end at all this week. And when you do, you're going to go to Gronk. Nobody's going to go to Kittle. And we've already seen it once this year. He's broken slates and won people's slates. I take Kittle over 54.5 receiving yards on prizepicks.com. If you want to tail me on that prop, over under on props, use the code SAL. Listen up. Tell your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle as well. Take advantage of this offer. Use the code SAL, S-A-L. You get a free bet up to $100 on prizepicks.com. They're the partners of this program. We just signed a new extension with them. I'm excited for this partnership in 2022. You should be as well. Get on the platform. Enjoy yourself. Code SAL, prizepicks.com. The third option here is one that I'm a little bit giddy about. It does concern me somewhat, but I'm giddy about this one because this has been like a 2-year track record in the making. Just the quarterback is the concern for this man. And it's kind of been the case all season long. Terry McLaurin at 3% ownership right now. I have him for 13.8 fantasy points. I have him at $6,200. And actually, everybody has him at $6,200, Sal. Thanks. But he gets a New York Giants secondary. His team has a 23 implied team total for a week with a bunch of games like under 50 or under 45 for team totals. That's decent. That's solid for the week. But he gets a Giants secondary that ranks bottom 3rd in the NFL. And he has torched this secondary for multiple years. And there's a key reason why. I mean, Terry McLaurin is a 4.4 speed guy. He is a very fast guy who has speed acceleration. He's a good route runner, of course. That helps. But he has speed. The Giants secondary for multiple years now has been extremely fucking slow, especially the guy that they keep putting on because he's got a name value. He's in Carolina, but he's getting older and he's slow. That guy they keep putting on him is James Bradbury, who again, is slower, is older, but he at least has size. Terry McLaurin's like a 215-pound receiver, and 215 pounds is Bradbury. So they put Bradbury on him. He can try and stick him at the line of scrimmage. It doesn't work. Terry McLaurin's route running, his release, his speed, the big one, his speed, continues to toast this team. He scored 30-plus points earlier in the year. It was arguably and probably was his best performance of the year, DraftKings-wise, against this Giants secondary. And the speed, if you look at the tape, go back and look at the tape, go look at Game Pass, right? The all-22 week. The speed was the main reason why. The release helps, but the speed is, he's just getting 3 steps on these dudes. McLaurin moves all around the field. He'll be on the left for about half the time, but he'll go into the slot, the right side for about a quarter of the time as well. So he'll see all these Giants cornerbacks who are all slower than him significantly. And outside of Bradbury, they're all much smaller than him as well. And we know that McLaurin's a good receiver. It's just this matchup looks really fucking good. I mean, a 24% target share in the year, seeing about 8 targets per game. The big concern for McLaurin, I mean, he leads the NFL right now in unrealized air yards. He's top 5 in air yards. So he's getting these deep targets nonstop from Taylor Heineke and YOLO ball. Taylor Heineke's just not completing them. Taylor Heineke is just not good. Approximately a third of Terry McLaurin's targets this year are uncatchable. That ranks 72nd in the NFL. There's 32 teams. There's 32 starting number 1 receivers. There's 64 top 2 wide receivers on each team. McLaurin ranks 72nd in his catchable targets. That's how bad his target quality has been this year. And you might be saying, but Sal, why are we going to play him this week? I just said a bunch of reasons why, but other than that, this is a 1-week sample. Can he hit? He's going to get those 4 or 5 deep targets of 15 to 20 plus yards. Can we just finally get 1 or 2 of those to hit, Mr. Taylor Heineke? Can we finally get it? And this is the matchup for it to happen. The advantages are there. The offensive line, the defensive pass rush for the Giants is not there to fluster Taylor Heineke like he's been for most of the time this year. So let's look at these comparisons, right? You're talking about Terry McLaurin. He's $6,200 at $6,000 slot. Christian Kirk, who is getting solid usage, but there are some flaws in Kirk's game. He's been moving to the outside more, and that's just not where he wins as much as in the slot for the Cardinals since the Hopkins injury. And with that happening, you're getting Christian Kirk at $6,000 flat. He is currently picking up 10% ownership, so I have it as triple the ownership as Terry McLaurin for the same fantasy points, basically 14.5 compared to 13.8. Again, I like Christian Kirk. If you're playing an Arizona stack, he's fine in there. But if I'm looking at comparisons and I'm saying, wait, I can get a third of the ownership Terry McLaurin, who I have for a higher ceiling, similar median projection. I can get that? Yeah, give me that. So we took a guy in the mid-50s in George Kittle in his receiving yards. I'm doubling down here, and I'm taking Terry McLaurin over 52.5 receiving yards for Terry McLaurin. You should as well. Again, you want the free bet up to $100, even if you already got an account. I mean, tell your mother, your brother, your sister, and to make an account. Use theirs. And you get the free $100 if you use the code SAL on prizepicks.com. Over on Kittle. Over 52.5, we're adding on Mr. Terry McLaurin. So we've talked about pass catchers, 2 receivers, a tight end, a really good fucking tight end, Mr. George Kittle. Hey, now we're going to talk about a running back. Let's talk about a running back, and then we'll have one more for you beautiful people out there. The running back that I want to let you know about, I mean, he's great. He's dealing with injuries, though. Wednesday and Thursday, limited participant. He wasn't out, but a limited participant dealing with a knee and a chest injury, so multiple injuries. Their team's not fighting for anything at this point. Their quarterback has been shut down, going to go get surgery. It's the Cleveland Browns. It's Nicholas Chubb. $7,900 Nick Chubb. I already have told you this week is really difficult to find value. I mean, people are going to play Jonathan Taylor, and then after that, it's like, where do I get the value? There's like nothing certain at receiver. There's like, man, not really much here at running back below 5,500. So the last thing that people are going to do is play 2 stud running backs. I mean, that's just the last thing they're going to do. There's not enough money for it. And if they were to do that, they'll probably take Alvin Kamara, who's actually playing for something this week against a terrible offensive line in Atlanta. Nick Chubb is there at $7,900. Nick Chubb is at $7,900 for a guy, again, they're not playing for anything this week. But if he's out there, he's dealing, this is the perfect indicator. He is dealing with injuries this week. If they actually activate him for this game when he's dealing with injuries, they're clearly not that big of a deal, the injuries, and they clearly are not concerned about them, which if they're actually putting him out there for the game, I think they're going to let him play. And with that being said, he's going to get a good matchup because not only do the Bengals rank bottom half of the league in run defense, right? They rank bottom half of the league in run defense, and they're resting their starters based on the Vegas odds for this game, dropping to like 14.5 for the Bengals team total. So now you get a really good matchup for Nick Chubb, who's already an insanely efficient runner. I mean, he's averaging like 6 yards per touch on the season. He's seeing 18.5 opportunities per game this year. Honestly, Baker Mayfield not being out there is not that concerning for me on them being able to move the ball and sustain some drives compared to Brandon Allen coming in, or Case Keenum, I should say. Case Keenum, Brandon Allen on the opposite side of this game. So you're probably going to have the Browns by the time this thing kicks off being favorites in the game. A positive 81% run blocking advantage is the 3rd best on the week, and the man who breaks a ton of tackles, top 5 in evaded tackles, even missing time this year, Nick Chubb, he's been that damn good. I'd put him right behind Jonathan Taylor as the best running backs this season. That man now faces a Cincinnati Bengals team that ranked 23rd in tackling when their starters weren't. And now the backups are going to start to come in. The other thing that's going to keep his ownership down is not only that they're not playing for something, the biggest thing is the price tag, of course, but he's also coming off of a bad game. Like if Nick Chubb was coming off of back-to-back games of 100 plus yards, multiple touchdowns, yeah, his ownership's going to be, instead of what I currently have it at right now, it's 7% ownership, $7,900, 18.8 fantasy point projection. His ownership probably be 12 to 15%. So we're getting it at 7% ownership right now. And another reason why is last week it was a terrible game. Just 12 touches, 58 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I hate to break it to you, he didn't even play 50% of the snaps. They kind of mailed it in that one. He wasn't really out there all that much. He played 45% of the snaps when this is a dude normally playing 65 to 70% of the snaps. So I'm not too concerned about that. He saw 12 touches on basically 2/3 of his normal workload. If you want comparisons here at the running back position, I mean, Dalvin Cook, who I definitely like, but he also has some concerns. They're not playing for anything, right? $7,800 Dalvin Cook, so basically the same price, projecting out for 19.4 fantasy points. I've got Chubb for 18.8, so basically the same there. Cook is coming in at 16% ownership. So give or take double the ownership of Nick Chubb this week. And that's fine. I understand it. Like Cook has a receiving game role, but neither of these guys are playing for anything. Both of these guys have been beaten up this year, so they have an equal chance of maybe not getting as many touches in this game. Yet one of them is going to come in with double to maybe triple the ownership. I'll go to Nick Chubb for leverage for sure there. I think you should too. So that one, dude, let's close it up now with somebody that we haven't done in a while. It maybe since like week 4 or week 5, taking a quarterback as a leverage play. We haven't done this in a while because a lot of the weeks that quarterback ownership doesn't matter. This type of a wacky week with a bigger slate, 13 games, I think we actually have a leverage play at quarterback this week that right now looks good. We showed you in the final thoughts video that released on Friday morning. Check that out. A couple of quarterbacks that I like. One of them is this guy, and I think he's going to be a massive leverage play, and he's affordable. That man's name is $6,200 Taysom Hill, who I have for 20.2 fantasy points. Now, I will put out a big disclaimer. Tyler Huntley, if he comes in similar to lower owned, when and if Lamar is ruled out, hasn't practiced this week, Huntley will be a guy that I really like and will be deciding between him and Taysom for my single entry lineup more than likely. Kyler maybe, but for the value, those two guys. I personally believe Huntley, once everything is altered, if Friday or Saturday Lamar's ruled out, I personally believe if that happens, Huntley will start to pick up more ownership, reducing even more Taysom Hills. If I am right on that, Taysom Hill even better leverage. If I am wrong on that, and Taysom Hill's getting the ownership and none to Huntley, well, kind of probably slide Huntley into this section. But Taysom Hill right now, 6,200. I have him for 20.2 fantasy points. He's like my 4th highest projected quarterback, and he's nowhere near the top 4. He's not even in the 8 Not even in the 7K range. He's barely in the 6K range in pricing. I have him coming in at 5% projected ownership. This guy is actually playing for something. This guy has a 40% chance to make the playoffs. A win here, and the 49ers, who are 6-point underdogs against the Rams on the road, and the Rams probably want to beat them so they don't have to see them again in the playoffs potentially next week. Yeah, there's a decent chance here that if they win this game as favorites on the road for New Orleans, I mean, yeah, this is an interesting spot here. Decent team total, 22.5, 6-point favorites, more rushing attempts potentially for Taysom Hill. He gets a secondary in Atlanta that ranks 24th. He gets a defensive line that ranks dead last in the NFL, 32nd in total pressures, can't tackle, can't stop the run. This is a bad defensive line. This is the perfect matchup for a mobile quarterback. A defense that's not going to pressure you. Oh, nothing's opening up downfield because your receivers are Deontay Harris and Marquez Callaway. Oh, well, perfect. Take off for your 7-yard run. Oh, your 11-yard run. Oh, your 6-yard run. Oh, your 3-yard rushing touchdown. It's perfect. In 4 starts this year, Taysom Hill is averaging 20.4 fantasy points per game, weeks 13 to week 17. He's averaging 63 rushing yards per game, and now he gets this terrible defensive line. Look, it's interesting. He pulls away. He wasn't drafted, he wasn't drafted as a quarterback, all that, but he has, relative to quarterbacks, 4.5 speed. That's insane speed. He pulls away from these defenders. You saw it about a month ago when he broke a 30, 40-plus yard rushing touchdown. He pulls away. So on an awful week where it's hard to find affordable and stable, like what their playing time is going to be quarterbacks, you get a guy playing for something and who's very affordable in Taysom Hill. For comparative reasons, let's look at Matthew Stafford, who's $500 more expensive, $6,700. I have Stafford for 19.1 fantasy points this week, but Stafford's coming in 7% owned, similar to higher ownership than Taysom Hill, where he's going to be in a more run-first offense. They're favorites in a game against a difficult team in San Francisco that has had a good time giving Sean McVay and his offenses, including Stafford earlier this year, some trouble. So that's an interesting one. Like, I know it's not Stafford 20% owned, but a lot of people are going to go to guys like Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, 8% ownership, even Carson Wentz, 5% ownership, even though they're going to hand the ball off, right? This is a spot where Taysom Hill, maybe he hands the ball off 20 times to Kamara, but I think it's more likely he throws in this game 25 to 30 times. He himself rushes for somewhere around 8 to 10 times. I'll take that at low ownership if it remains. I will also I have Taysom Hill for 234 passing yards. His prop on PricePicks is 199.5. Let's take the over there to close up the show. We have 3 props. You use the code SAL, you get a free bet up to $200, over 199.5 passing yards for Taysom Hill. Cheers to you. My coffee is perfectly warm. It was so hot when it came out. And now, since this was a 20-minute, 15-minute show, it's perfect temperature to sip on it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. You're all a beautiful people. I appreciate you a ton. We will be live, depending on when you're watching this, live on Saturday. Odds are you already watched it, or that already happened before the Saturday Millie Maker 2-game slate. Live on Sunday morning to close out the regular season, and we head into the postseason. The Golf Betting Network is already up and running, 1 week in the book, so I'm excited about that. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. If you like golf, if you like betting on other things in DFS, and you want interesting sweats, check out the Golf Betting Network, link down below as well. You all rock. I'll see you all when I see you, and I will definitely see you right in the next one.